my recommendation is when you're deciding what you want to ask for, say, am I willing to lose the house over this demand? Because it's not a suggestion if you put it in writing. It's really, you're putting it in writing, it's a demand, So that's how it's going to come across, that you want this done or you're not going to do the deal, because that's kind of how these contracts work. And so when you ask for something, just say, am I willing to lose the house over this?
Okay, so what can I expect when we go into negotiation with the seller?
Okay, so basically what you need to know is, what's important to you, first of all. What's the most important thing that you need to make sure happens with this transaction regarding the home, regarding how you want it to play out? It's also good to see if your agent can find out what's important to the seller, so you can know that information, so you can kind of compromise and kind of negotiate that way. Really, it kind of boils down to is, what are the things that you really want to fight for? And what are the things that you're willing to give up? Because your offer is going to be your best case scenario many times. Their counter offer is going to be their kind of best case scenario, and you have to find out if somehow you can meet in the middle.
Well, how many times do we go back and forth in this? Their offer on my offer. How many times can we do that?
That's a good question, because a lot of people say, you know what, I can't ever go up or down, but I can always go up. So let's lowball these sellers to see if we can get the best price. In our experience, if you give this seller an offer and they counter one back, and then you counter a number two back, it's rare that we've ever seen a third, fourth, and fifth ever get a deal done. And so our recommendation is simple offer, good price, good terms, and put your best foot forward first.
It's like you had said before, it's kind of, there's a lot of emotion involved.
Right.
And when you put your best foot forward with that offer, and then they put their best foot forward with the counter, and if you haven't come together, it can kind of be like, oh, well, this guy doesn't want to work with me, when it's not that at all. They're just trying to do the best, and that's when you have that opportunity to kind of come together.
So the seller doesn't see that as we're going to go back and forth, back and forth?
Once you get to counter offer 4 or 5, the deal is usually dead. Most people cannot handle that.
That's right.
So don't go in there thinking you're going to go back and forth, because it usually never works out.
Just a couple weeks ago, we had a seller. They had a lowball offer come in, and then over a couple of weeks, they brought their price up, and then another offer came in to compete against the first offer that was less money, and they took that other offer for less money because the trust factor on the counter was lost with the first buyer. And so that's one thing to consider, is that you have to show the seller that you're willing and able to close and not nitpick every little thing.
And I might not be the only offer in the end. Yeah.
Exactly right.
So how do I know what to ask for? When we're negotiating, how do I know what to ask for?
Well, I think it's important. You need to know what you want. What do you want in the home? And it depends on the market, right? But in a hot market, when prices are strong and high, my recommendation is when you're deciding what you want to ask for, say, am I willing to lose the house over this demand? Because it's not a suggestion if you put it in writing. It's really, you're putting it in writing, it's a demand, So that's how it's going to come across, that you want this done or you're not going to do the deal, because that's kind of how these contracts work. And so when you ask for something, just say, am I willing to lose the house over this? Because many times when we look at it that way, deals are easy. It's easier to put deals together, because that's a realistic way to look at it. Because after the fact, nothing's worse than when you don't look at it that way, you lose the deal, and you're like, man, that wasn't that important for me. I probably shouldn't have put that in there. It's like, yeah, you probably shouldn't have put that in there, but you wanted it in there. But they're playing the game.
Yeah.
But in some markets, you can't. The game is a different game.
So we talk about multiple offers. So if I get in a multiple offer situation where I put an offer and there's other offers, how do I know what to go up to on my price?
Yeah.
So basically, there's two perspectives, right? because typically most homes are being purchased with financing, so they're getting a loan. So when you go up in price, it's going to increase your payment, right? And so your payment's going to go up. $4 roughly for every $1,000 that you borrow. You know, it depends on rates, but somewhere around there. And so basically, if you go up $5,000, that's like $20 a month. Something to keep in mind. But if you go up $5,000 in price, that's $5,000 in the seller's bank account
Today.
You know. And so sometimes, you know, it's immediate. You have to come together on price, but realize their perspective and realize your perspective, because right now, I mean, over time, real estate appreciates, and so you might be nitpicking $1,000 or $2,000, which might boil down to $8 a month, but 5 years later, that $1,000 or $2,000 won't matter because your home's going to be worth way more than that. And typically, we aren't buying a home for that main reason. I mean, we just need a home over our, you know, a roof over our heads and a place for us to call home. So
I like the analogy that you use, that if you wake up tomorrow morning and see someone else bought it.
yeah. Yeah, and we kind of call that the no regret offer, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're negotiating and you're saying, hey, if you woke up tomorrow morning, are you going to be mad about this? And usually over $1,000 or $2,000, you will be.
Yeah.
Not all the time, I mean, but most people will be. Yeah. And so you kind of have to, you know, negotiate that way. I mean, it's in not as strong of a market, you can play a little bit, you know, but you have to play a different way when it's a strong market. And so you have to really kind of start with your best foot forward of that no regret
So is that
offer.
what they call a highest and best offer?
Yeah, so
Is that the idea?
highest and best offer many times is what, when there's a multiple offer situation, the fairest way is to give everybody an equal opportunity to give their highest and best offer. And it's a different concept because the highest offer might not be the best offer. And the best offer might not be the highest offer. So it might not always be about money. Usually it is. What's going to give me the most amount of money in my bank account is usually how offers are picked. But sometimes it might be who's the most flexible with closing. The seller might need 6 weeks. You know, so who's going to be okay with 6 weeks? Right. Or the offer might be really complicated. You know, they might ask for a whole bunch of things up front. Or they might be with a lender who is notorious for closing, for having the deal blow up at the end, or never closing on time. You know, there are lenders that never close on time. Well, never is a strong word, but have a record of not closing on time.
So highest and best might not just be highest and best price, highest and best terms.
It's about the presentation of the offer and having a strong offer. And trying to find out what's important to the seller. You know, because if you can know what's important to the seller, you might be able to cater it and have an advantage.
So do I need to contact the seller then?
Your agent will always contact the seller. So
talk to them about everything.
Yeah, you as the buyer never should contact the seller. It just does not end well. And I mean, that's why they've hired a real estate agent, you've hired us, and that's what we do.
So you talk about a payment change if I decide to increase my offer. How do I know how much that payment will be increased? I mean, how do I know what that is on my personal loan?
Sure. So your loan is going to be a percentage of your purchase price, right? And so you've got to understand what your cash out of pocket's going to be and what your monthly payment is going to be based on the loan amount. So if you increase the purchase price, it will probably increase your down payment a little bit. But over time, just what Chad said, $1,000, $2,000 is, you know, $6, $8, $10 a month. And so the impact to us as a buyer can be over time instead of the seller right this second. So
how will I know how much that will be on my personal loan? How much that my loan payment will go up?
Sure. So your loan officer absolutely needs to be contacted at that point, because you may be getting outside of the guidelines on the loan program you're approved on, and they may have some advice on that.
Okay.
So call them.
Is there anything else I should know, have in mind, to keep in mind during this negotiation?
You know, the last thing I would say is that never hide anything and think that you're going to get away with something. You know, if I hurry and close this house, Maybe they won't find out about a tax lien that might come, or maybe if I have I got a 30-day termination notice from my job, let's hurry and close this. I just bought a new car and there's a new loan and they didn't tell me, or it didn't show up on my credit, or there might be a divorce that didn't come up and there's a payment to, a past, something like that, alimony, child support. Let's get that on the table up front as soon as we can, because it will always come out. It will always come out.
It will always come out.
Yeah, all of these are examples we've seen where someone bought a truck, it doesn't show up on credit when they make the offer, but then they're going to check your credit before closing again. And the day before closing, boom, you have a big payment on a vehicle. Guess who can't buy a house now? You can't
right.
qualify.
Can't qualify.
We're used to our finances being somewhat private personally.
Mm-hmm.
Well, during this process, there's a huge microscope on your finances.
Yeah.
They're going to check it all. They're going to check it at the beginning, the middle, and the end. And, many, many times we see someone who, the divorce isn't figured out, or maybe there was a death in the family and you have to go through probate, all these different things.
Right. And they could be simple early and terrible later.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it sounds like with good information,
You can
we can
make
make
good
good decisions.